And we are now recording. You're still hearing me okay?
I am.
All right. We are now recording. You're still hearing me okay? All right.
Yep, I am.
Hang on a second here. I got to go shut off this. Okay. All right. So we're not getting any feedback. Make sure we're not hearing ourselves. Okay. All right. Well, we have survived some technical difficulties, but that's what happens when my partner, Jonathan Denwood, is not in the house to help us. Welcome back, my friends, to episode 93 of the Mail Right Real Estate Agent Podcast Show. And I have my good friend Neil from FBS Property Management here today as my special guest. My name is Thomas J. Nelson. I am running solo today. Jonathan is actually out being interviewed on another podcast. So he turned the controls over to me, and we'll see how that turns out. So I'm a residential realtor here in San Diego, California. And I work with guys like Neil in property management and investment. And so I'd like to turn things over to Neil and let him introduce himself. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thomas, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Neil Fjellestad. I'm a local boy, born and raised and product of local schools, including San Diego State University. Graduated with an accounting degree. Immediately, at the dismay of my father, went out and used that accounting degree to do full-time real estate brokerage, commission only. Okay, so he thought I was nuts. He wouldn't talk to me for months. Anyway. But I joined a firm that was dealt strictly in investment property, and I was able to get into this firm because of my accounting degree. And I became quickly a 1031 specialist for the company all throughout California, because they had offices in Northern California and here in San Diego. And so that allowed me to jumpstart my career. 3 years later, I started my own firm and have been operating that since. For 45 years. We're celebrating 45 years this year. So,
oh, wow. Congratulations.
And always with an investment bend. We have used different kinds of properties to accomplish that, both for my wife and myself and for our other investors and for friends and brokerage contacts. So love to work with realtors such as Thomas, because he has that same kind of energy that he draws people onto the brokerage side. I left that side of the business some years ago. About 20 years ago, as a matter of fact, and to strictly work with preserving my own equity through good, sound management and the equity of others that I considered close friends as well as investment partners.
Well, all right. So, Neil, I want to dive into this because I have a lot of questions. And so we're going to talk about the decision to invest and then how to handle those investments and where property management comes in. So, but first of all, because you guys do something that I don't see a lot of property managers do, and that is you actually get involved with your clients in the decision-making process of the properties they're going to invest in, and even offer them advice in advance of some of the things they may consider having to do to the property to make it acceptable to rent to a tenant. So the first question I have is, when somebody makes the decision to buy and hold property and rent it out, what are the things they should be considering on the onset of that decision?
Well, many times we have different kinds of people that come into the situation in similar ways. Very few people know that much about investment real estate. They don't necessarily know how to acquire it. They don't necessarily know how to own or manage it. And they don't necessarily have a plan for doing any of that. We suggest that there needs to be a team in place and that we are an integral part of that team before even the first property is purchased. Now, often that doesn't happen. We meet people after they've purchased property, after they've owned property. Often we find that they are what we call situational investors, meaning that they own the property, they lived in it for a time. Let's say they owned a condo. That was their first purchase. Now they've traded up to a single family house. But they were able to do that because of financing options. They were able to do that without using any of the equity that they had in the condo. So they think, and somebody maybe says to them, why don't you just hold on to that and own it as a real estate investment? And so they decide that they will try that. Or let's look at it another way. Maybe they didn't want to do that. Maybe it's somebody that wanted to sell their property, but the marketplace wouldn't allow them to, at least not at full value.
Right.
And so instead of giving away value, they said, well, heck with that. I'm not going to give this value that I worked hard to achieve over time. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to try to rent this out. But the fact of the matter is they are situational, meaning that they have never really bought into the strategy of owning investment property and owning it over the long time, which is why that's how it works. It is a long-term investment, and to operate it as rental property as a business, as a rental business. So they haven't made any of those decisions. They've just made the decision not to do something, which is to not sell the property.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the best ways to get involved. But so one of the things many times that we look at is okay, what financing is on the property? When did you put this financing on the property? How long have you owned it? What kind of equity position do you have? What were the pluses and minuses of living in this as a resident? Put all of those into a bag and start feeding them back to them as, okay, what does this mean to you as an investor? The fact that you liked it as an occupant, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. If you found the benefits outweighed the minuses and you know what each of those are, and you either worked around them successfully or maybe you improved the property to get past them, well, whatever it is, there are other people like yourself. Now, here's the thing, Thomas. Half the people in San Diego County, what is there, 3.2 million people?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're exceeding that.
There's about 1.2 million households. You know how many of them rent?
I would guess 50%.
That's it. You know, and a lot of people would guess that. You only guess that because you've been to some of our seminars and you know your stuff, okay?
I know.
So I threw you a softball, man.
Yeah, you
and
did.
So the fact of the matter is, a lot of people think that it is not the majority, or not even. So the fact the matter is, half the people rent, half the people own. Are there really that much differences in the way they enjoy a home? No, there really isn't. They're people. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, some of the things that investors that are just roll into this, some of the things that they're good about, they know what they liked about it as a person living there. But let's say that they've owned this property for a long time. They owned it 20 years ago and they lived in it 20 years ago. Do they know what they like about it now? Well, no, the marketplace has changed. Have your buyers changed in the last 20 years?
Oh, yeah.
Have some of their tastes changed in the last 20 years?
Yeah, tastes and needs.
Yeah, that's right. So the fact of the matter is, they do not know. They have completely pulled away from what is going to be their customers.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is, they don't know their customers at all. They don't know their potential customers at all.
Okay, now you've touched on two things already that I want to make sure people are catching. You just mentioned earlier that the decision to own a rental property is the decision to own a business.
Yeah.
And these are your customers. And, I at the risk of sounding condescending to someone that rents, and I used to be someone that rented, I don't treat my tenants like tenants. I treat them like clients. There's no difference to me between someone renting one of my rental properties and someone asking me to help them buy or sell property. They're all clients. But
do you know how rare that is?
Well, I'm trying to help.
You see that half that rents is known as the other half.
Right.
Okay. And that's not a good thing. I don't know how the other half lives. Somehow we think that we live differently when we own, when we're paying a mortgage instead of we're paying rent. Okay. The fact of the matter is, in this last recession woke people up. One of the effects of this last recession indicated that, you know what? People, whether they have a mortgage or they don't have, they will either pay their mortgage or not pay their mortgage, or pay their rent or not pay their rent, based upon whether or not they're being satisfied as an occupant, based upon if they feel like they got a fair deal. If they didn't get a fair deal, they feel that they're being disrespected. You know what? They will quit paying.
Right.
And we found that all over the country. As a matter of fact,
Absolutely.
Harvard did a joint housing study and found out, you know what? There's no difference between the mental attitude of someone called a owner and someone called a renter.
Right.
We think the same.
Well, a good renter, and I've been blessed to have many in my rental properties. They treat it like it's their own home, and that's a good thing. So why do you think people miss this point? Why do you think what I just said earlier is a rare attitude? Why don't more property owners treat their tenants like clients and run their business like a business?
Well, there's a number of reasons, and part of it has to do with the tradition of how we grew up. If you look at the people that own rental property, and understand, a lot of people think, well, gee, if half the people rent, then this must be a huge rental market. Therefore, corporate, big, huge institutional owners must be the real landlords of this. And there are some.
Well, yes.
But if you took all those big landlords together, let's say that we took 50 units and above. Okay,
right.
That would get us up to about 150 to 200,000 of the 600,000 rentals that are out there. The rest of them are below that, and most of them, about 80% of them, are below 20 units, and about 200,000 of them are just single condos and houses.
Right.
Okay. 200,000 at least. And that's a conservative estimate, is probably closer to 300,000. So the point of it is that these are people just like us that rent, and these are people that just like us that own. The fact of the matter is there's very little difference. So when we go to stores, there are advertising, and there's all the kind of this customer development that teaches us that we're customers. We didn't get any of that as renters. And so there was no course that said, well, you're going to be a renter someday. And we didn't have in our civics classes in high school, you're going to be a renter. This is how to be a good one. And you know what? You're a customer of this is your largest household expense. And they're providing that for you. And you ought to keep them on their toes because you are their customer. There's no class like that. And on the other hand, there's no class that says to landlords. Now, the reality here is, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, is that you own a business. Right. And you have customers. And so you need to go to a business school. You need to go to at least a business class that teaches you how to do customer service and so forth. Right. You're in business. You're in the real estate business. Everybody knows you're in the real estate business. They expect you to be customer oriented. But when this is the second thing that I do, and I just, I do something completely different as my day job. I just happen to own a rental property. Nobody taught me, or nobody expects me to be a customer service guy, or right. a happy lady that wants their residents or what have you. Plus the fact that if you take into account that these are some of our oldest citizens, they have a generational shift that right. they haven't paid attention to a whole lot. Right. So the generational shift is one thing. The marketplace has shifted dramatically, and the fact of the matter is that they just haven't been accustomed to it. They haven't been taught or trained. We find that we do the management, but we still have to educate our owners that, hey, don't get in your own way. This is your customer. Let's treat them with respect. That we are charging very high rents. They are paying 40, 50% of their income. At least 30%, but many times 35, 45, 55% of their income for their domicile. And is it their home? Well, you betcha. It's where they come home after a hard day at work, because they have to work hard to make the money to afford that house or that condo or that apartment, whatever it is. It's their home. Do they take pride in being there? Yes. If they're not taking pride in being there, then maybe they're angry about something, and maybe it happens to be how they got into it. Just like the people that found out that they were built when they bought the properties back in the mid 2000s, when they bought them in 2004 and 2005, and they found that they paid way over the fair market value. Right. They weren't real happy about paying their mortgage payment. And they were at risk for walking away. Well, we have renters. We take over properties where the owners or the management company have treated them terribly. They have not been treated like customers. Nobody asked them their opinion, what they thought about this, how they felt about this, and what could be done about this. Nobody listened to any of that. And so Of course they're on edge. And then we have a legal system that basically creates them as adversaries. We have landlords and we have tenants. Just listen to the terms. The terms are not anything that we allow in any other business. Okay,
That's true. Landlord,
landlord, tenant. Okay, that makes us sound on opposite sides of the law, of common sense, of consumerism, everything.
Well, it's the old feudal system.
Yeah, it is, and it's come forward. So we have the tradition even of what we call the legal terms in the and certainly California is no different than that. And you have, but consumers are very savvy. Consumers are very aggressive. Consumers are very demanding, and that's one of the things that they have been taught by their parents, and they're good at it. This new generation is probably the best customers that this country has ever created.
I would agree with that. I've been working with a lot of them. You know, you hear a lot of millennial talk, but I'll tell you, I've got a lot of positive experiences with them. But I want to shift gears here. In the interest of time, I want to make sure we hit some good points here. And going back to the decision, now you talked mostly about people that kind of fall into the rental property. It's the property's already in their family. What about people that are making the decision to go out and buy a property? How do they determine, from your point of view, what's the right property, whether to get a condo, a single family home, multifamily, commercial? How do you recommend people evaluate that?
You know, I would say the same thing that I would say as a financial investor for other kinds of investments. What are you comfortable with? What are your levels of risk? What are your concerns? In other words, as a matter of fact, I was just talking to a young man. He happens to be an officer at the bank, one of the banks that I do business with. And so he asked me, I found out that he didn't own property. He has a very high paying job. He's single. And I told him that, you know what, your first purchase is likely to be an investment property. It's not necessarily going to be where you're going to live, but you could choose to live there for a time, or you might not choose to live there at all. But the fact of the matter is, where do you live now? And he told me. I said, well, so would you consider that as a good place to own property? He says, well, yeah, I think I would. I said, well, all right, there's a place to start. Now you start looking at neighborhoods. Now ask some of your friends where they live as renters and where they think, do they think they live in a good neighborhood? Do they think that they have good access to services, that they are in good driving or mass transit to be able to get to their employment? All of these things are important. Get them to focus on what do they enjoy, what do they like, what do they need. Okay, so now you got a sense of what would be customers of the investment that you're going to buy. Okay, so that's some of the most successful people that I know in the stock market. They buy stocks of companies that they use their products. Right. It's real simple. In other words, so we don't have to make this hard.
Invest in what you know.
Invest in what you know.
Yeah.
So get acquainted with and get used to stuff that you know. And so it's probably that you're going to, as an investment, you're going to probably buy an individual condo or a single family house. But you're going to do it in such a way that you're going to know what the rental market is for that, and you're going to know what expenses are likely for owning that property. You're going to know what kinds of improvements need to be made to that property to keep it at market rent and to keep it healthy as a real estate investment. And because you're going to want to look towards a longer term ownership. This idea of taking what has been traditionally a very successful long-term investment and try to turn it into a short-term gain. That's where investors got off some time ago.
Yeah, okay? They started day trading real estate, which
that's exactly that's a good analogy. Yeah. You don't day trade real estate, okay? It's a long-term investment. So if you're not going to hold this thing if you don't see yourself owning this thing for 6-8 years anyway, just as a base, okay, then that's probably not the right property for you. So keep looking until you get into a healthy, so that probably it's anywhere from 6 to 10 years. In other words, you're not going to be concerned about selling that property. You're not looking at what you're going to make on the sale of that property. What you're going to look at is how can you hold this property? So you're going to want to see, based upon the reasonable expenses that have to go out, based upon, and one of those expenses needs to be professional management. There was a survey done just last year. It was a countrywide survey. and they had over 1,000 respondents. And they found that one of the most important, the high level of agreement on this, that the most important decision that they made in buying investment property or in owning their investment property was the selection of a property manager. Now that goes against common thought process too. Well, there's over 600 property management companies in this town, and a whole lot more if you just count individual agents that say that I'll take care of your property for you.
Right.
Yeah. And so the fact of the matter is, they don't look at any kind of qualifications. They don't look at any kind of expectations. They don't put any reality in the fact that the property manager that is on the front lines of handling that liability, that customer service, all of that sort of stuff, is one of the most important decisions that they made. But the people that do own property that were surveyed say absolutely that was the most important decision that they made. So you don't make it lightly.
So I want to touch on the value of a property manager in a moment, because I want to lead into that though with something that I know you to do and your company to do that in my experience with a lot of other property management companies, they do not do, and that is you will go out with a client that's about to purchase a property and help evaluate that property and make them aware of, you go around and kick the tires with them and what's it going to take to make this rentable. Talk about the punch list that goes into that. Like what are you typically doing for people?
Well, and understand, we are happy to do this. And the reason that we're happy to do this, everything that I've said thus far proves the fact that we need to, number one thing that we're going to do for clients is we're going to educate them. And we start that education process as quickly as we can. We take that through a walkthrough. Most people, they don't know what an angle stop is. They don't know what the valve coming into the property that regulates the water pressure throughout the home. They don't understand the water heater. They don't understand the roof. They don't understand all of the physical components of a property. Okay. And so that's an important thing to bring our expertise to in terms of what things need to be changed out, when they need to be changed out. Preventative maintenance is key. Yes. Because, all of these kinds of things. And then we talk about some of the designer things. What difference does a floor plan make? For instance, for this young man that I was referring to earlier, I took a piece of paper and I drew a floor plan. I says, if you're finding a condo that you want to buy for an investment, this is the best kind. And I drew the living room in the middle and one bedroom over here and one bedroom on the other side. Right. Okay. With its own bathroom. Right. I says that split arrangement is good. Why is that? And he didn't have to think, but he says, well, that'd be better for roommates. Right. Absolutely. And how do you know that? Because you're a roommate. Okay. So the fact of the matter is you're going with what you know. But the fact of the matter is that you know what's best. That is the best floor plan to buy. You will be happier with that floor plan than you will be with any other floor plan. And I can tell you that for shopping properties in 65 marketplaces across the country, it's all the same because it's about people. Okay, yep. So that's an important thing. They have shag carpet on the floor because it's an older property. They got old, beat up appliances, or they have chips in a vinyl countertop. And we ask them, how do you feel about that? Would you pay top dollar for that? Would you pay top dollar to be reminded of an era that was left 25 years ago? Yeah. So what do you think? Huh? Right. And would you feel better about something that maybe gave you access to, high-speed internet? That gave you Wi-Fi throughout the property, that was competitive with the newer stuff. Go out to some new properties that those corporate builders are building to be for rentals, okay? And see what is offered. You will find properties that are greener. You will find properties that are smarter. Yep. Okay, that's your competition. You want to beat it? Then beat it. Okay, you can do it. But we got a plan for it. That's what we can do. So there are designer kinds of modifications that ought to be made. Okay, there's some things maybe in the neighborhood that can't be dealt with. But if those hit you in the face first thing as you drive up to your property, is that going to be inviting to your renter coming home? Because it is their home. It's going to be your property, but it's going to be their home. So how many people do you see that are going to be invited home? when they drive up to this property. So what can we do about it? Can we paint it? Can we paint it better colors? Can we put in some landscaping? Can we do different things that will make it feel like you're putting money into your property for the sake of your customer? That's the message that you want to give throughout the ownership of this property.
That's a great point. That's such a great point.
And all of these can be helped in that first initial interviews, at the property as we're walking the property before you ever set foot in it. And then let's talk about the financing. How much leverage are you got going in? Are you actually going into a property that you're going to have to serve up money each and every month to keep it going? Right. How does that set with you? If you were buying a stock and you got to buy it with a little leverage, you might like that. But if you bought it with so much leverage that you had to keep feeding that stock every month, how long would you own that stock? I'll answer that real quick. You will own it less time than you should. Okay, yeah. That's the point. Okay, so let's look at your financing. Let's look at maybe a loan that you're going to have due, and you've put it off 5 years, but 5 years, wow, that comes up real fast. So why not get that into some kind of amortization kind of situation, or let's build you a plan to amortize that and take care of it. In other words, whatever you're going to do on the outside, we're going to have to complement on the inside in terms of building a plan by which you're going to deal with it.
Wow. So, I mean, everything you've just mentioned, I seriously doubt the average person would even consider, from the floor plan to the financing and everything you've mentioned in between. So this is already separating you from the pack as far as what you do for your clients, because you obviously want to see them succeed. And so what better time to get them into success mode than at the onset before they even buy the property?
You bet. And the fact of the matter is, ours is a team activity. And no disrespect, but a good real estate broker can be a dynamite customer service kind of guy or gal, and still not necessarily be the best team player. Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's true. All right. That doesn't work in property management. So you want to be inside that office of that property management company. You want to see that there is a sense of team. You want to go to their website. You want to see that there's a sense of team, that there's a sense of education, that there's an idea of excellence, that these people that are answering the phone, might have young people answering the phone. Do they know that they're helping customers like yours find a place to live? Okay, do they have a sense of that? Do they like doing that? Do they see that as an important job to do? In other words, so you have to have a system inside. We have an AMO designation. This is the highest this is the only designation given to a real estate organization.
What does that stand for?
It stands for an accredited management organization, and it is an international. It is held and owned by the Institute of Real Estate Management on a national and international level. And there's only about 550 of these designations held in the world. Okay, we hold one. Okay, we cherish it. We work for it. That means that we have education. That means we have a sense of excellence. That means that we have a sense of ethical behavior. Okay, and as a matter of fact, we can lose that designation by being unethical. Okay, yep. So the fact of the matter is, so we deal inside our company differently than other management companies deal inside their company.
Well, and that's a huge factor in your industry well, in mine too, is ethics. I mean, yeah. we see a lot of lack of.
Now, here's another thing.
Well, hang on, I'm going to stop you there. Pardon my interruption, but I'm noticing on the clock, we got to go to our pause for the cause here and
do it.
Let our wonderful sponsor tell us all about their service or product. So we'll be right back, folks. All right, we're coming back, and I'm sitting here with my good friend Neil from FBS Property Management here in San Diego, one of San Diego's best property management companies, and they are who I align my business with the last over 10 years. and would have been longer if I had discovered you sooner. I went with a few turkeys before I found the eagle.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, it goes both ways. We appreciate the kind of person, and we recognize the kind of person that you were, not just because we do business together, but because we've watched you interact as a leader, in the Chamber of Commerce and other kinds of activities. You always bring imagination and energy to situations that you're in, whether you're doing it as a volunteer or you're doing it for your clients. And I appreciate that. And that's not something that can be turned on or off. And so if I see it several different ways, I don't need to see every client that you have in front of you. I know they're getting the same Thomas Nelson, which was at high quality. So it goes both ways. And along that line, the fact of the matter is that we have, you have to use high-end technology these days.
Yep.
Our business is becoming more technology driven and technology supported. Okay, let me give you an idea. We have 2 leasing offices, or 2 major offices that we house people in the region. We have North County, where up in Rancho Bernardo. We have in Mission Valley, at the east end of Mission Valley in the college area, in the metro area. And from these, we handle 70 zip codes. We operate properties, whether they be houses, individual condos, small apartments, some commercial, etc., all over the county, 70 different zip codes. That kind of diversification helps us have expertise in a wide array. We also account to, on a very regular basis, to 600 plus ownerships. Now, many of those ownerships have more than one person in them, and so it's more than that from them, because they all like to think of themselves as individuals that need to be accounted to as individuals, including husbands and wives, I might add.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons that I stayed married for 50 years, because we have equality within our marriage. So the idea is that we work with properties all over, but as much business as we do out of our North County office, as much business as we do out of our metro office, most of our business, half of our business, is done over the internet.
Oh, wow.
And it is done via what's called a cloud application. Right. That will allow us to be anywhere that we need to be. So we can be in the field at any property, and we can report things from that property. It's communicated through that cloud. It can keep us, the people that are inside, we literally break this up. So we have a coordinator inside, we have a supervisor that is out in the field, and these people are communicating very regularly via this cloud application. So our clients come in through a portal, our renters come in through a portal. And so that means that they share that part of the cloud application that they need, that services their needs. For instance, our renters, they pay their rent online. In some cases, among our houses, it's almost close to, it's in the high 90s.
Oh, yeah.
% in terms of the ones that want to pay online. And It doesn't matter the price range. It doesn't matter the neighborhood location. It matters upon the people. And the people want the convenience, the security, and the privacy of paying the rent online. And I don't blame them. We have that same thing when we pay most of our bills. And so the fact of the matter is that's how they want to pay, and that's how they're allowed to pay. And we actually prefer it. It helps us actually kick loose some hours in the front end of the month that we can utilize for service. So that's a good thing.
Let me ask you a question, because you brought up paying the rent online. Let's talk about rent for a minute here. I want to shift gears on you.
Okay.
Why do landlords hesitate to raise their rent on a regular basis?
Because they're afraid that they're going to lose the resident.
Why would they lose the resident?
Because they're not delivering customer service to go along with the rent rate that they have. And the only thing they have is price. Now, whether they recognize that or not, and they might, in other words, that resident might be the kindest, nicest person that they're running into. And so they don't want to raise the rent because they have the kindest, nicest resident. The question I would ask is, yeah, and why are they so kind and nice? Because they know that the rent somewhere down the street is going to be $100 to $200 to $300 more. So they are getting the best end of this deal. And so nothing is ever wrong in their property. Nothing, they don't want you to do, they don't want you to come over the property. No need to come around, what have you. And I tell you, when owners get that property back, they are on the phone to us because they didn't want to raise the rent before, but oh my gosh, you should see the mold on the walls. And what's that going to take to remove?
Right.
That's not the only thing. We tell them, hey, listen, the reason that you have to have market rate is because you're going to have to pay market cost to replace a roof. You're going to have to pay market cost to replace a water heater. And when we need $1,000 or $10,000 from you for this particular, you're going to be beholden to the fact of how much did you build up in your account to make that emergency repair or that that needed deferred maintenance repair.
Well,
the fact of the matter is,
insurance go up too.
Yes, this is a business, and you have business expenses that are going up. One of the reasons that the rents are going up there's two reasons why the rents are going up so dramatically over the last several years, and that is that number one, that the rent rate in San Diego has been depressed since the mid-90s.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. And frankly, because I work in a number of other markets, I can tell you chapter and verse that our rents were out of line with the other major metropolitan areas that were similar to ours and other characteristics in real estate. Okay, so that had to correct itself. It is it's beginning to correct itself. There's still some room for that correction. People might be interested to hear that, but there's still some room to make that correction, but it's going to correct. And so rents are going to start to flatten out just a bit as we go forward. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the price and the rent were not connected. Now they are, and that's a good thing. That will be, see, other places, when you buy other places other than Southern California, you get a certain rent, and that rent justifies a certain price. Okay, in Southern California, you only look at price. You look at completely separate price, you pay it, and then you see how much rent you can get. It works in opposite. They call that in other places, they call it the Disneyland effect. They believe that we think in terms of Disneyland when we think of real estate. They just think we're loopy here. They don't. They think we're out of bounds.
What you're saying is that people aren't evaluating the rent they can get on the property before they buy. They just buy and then they see what they can get. And so in some cases they find out they're not cash flowing, which gets back to what you were saying earlier.
Exactly. Okay. Because they never make good calculations. And the other side of that is that one of the other reasons that you have to raise the rent, because I will tell you, particularly in California, the cost of operating a property is gone up substantially.
Yes.
And in the last few years, if you look at the EPA requirements, if you look at other consumer requirements, if you look at other laws that the owners, many of them completely ignorant of, but that's not a defense.
Right.
But it will not help them. But they are operating in a vacuum that was created 2 decades ago. And that vacuum will not be utilized that will not save them from any liability. And the fact of the matter is they have to spend money on property. So we look at bringing properties to market as several things. One is to raise the rent to the marketplace. In some cases, lower the rent, but usually it's raise the rent to the marketplace. The other thing is to raise the standard of the physical asset to the marketplace.
Right.
Okay. And that's tough in San Diego because our average rental product is 40 years old.
Right.
It's over 40 years old.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is to raise our standards of customer service to the marketplace. And that means not just in the real estate industry, but across the board. Okay. And so those three things go into the standard of raising to market. So when we take on a property, we're going to bring it to market. And that means those three things.
What would you say is an acceptable annual increase in rent?
Well, I don't know. From the standpoint, it depends upon where it's been for how long, et cetera, et cetera. But typically speaking, once we get, we're going to be in the area of probably we're probably going to be in the area of 5 to, 6 to 9. We look at actually 6 to 9% probably for the next couple of years, and then it'll drop down to 6 to 3%, and it'll probably ride there for a time.
And that's assuming, though, that the property's been brought up to market standards.
Yeah, you still have to get it to market. Okay?
Right. So,
and that means if to get it to market, and unfortunately what's happened right now is that some of the small owners have gotten their property to market because maybe a realtor has got them to wake up on that regard, but they haven't awakened in the other areas. So they haven't raised the physical asset to the standard of market, and they're not treating their customer with any, they're not letting their customer pay their rent online. They're not responding like a provider should, a service provider should, when they report a problem. They're not treating them with the contract and explaining the contract. We bring our renters in, they watch a video presentation that will go through each paragraph of their contract, each of their leasing contract, so that they know exactly what's expected. They know how to behave for a good rating from our company. Wow.
So what would you say are some of the biggest pitfalls or mistakes you've seen landlords or property owners make when it comes to things like repairs and interaction with the tenants, things like that?
That's a great question. We could go on for a whole show with that question.
Well, we got let me 3 minutes.
All right, let me start with the basic one from which the rest of them flow. Okay. Many times independent owners are kind of heavy on the independent. Okay. All right. And so we get things like attitudes like, I don't have to do that, or I'll do it when I want to, or it's the color I like because I own the property.
Right.
Okay. So there is a misunderstanding of basic real estate law 101, which is when you sign a lease, okay, and you lease it to somebody, you've actually transferred real estate rights for that period of time. So you have some rights that reside and are residual that will last, and some rights you've put in a different category, because that customer now has signed according to the lease, because many times you only have rights as an owner based upon the trustee agreement that you signed. Okay, it's not like I own it, nobody can tell me what to do. I beg to differ. The mortgage company can tell you what exactly to do. There's a long list of things they can tell you to do. Often they don't actually run it that way, but there's a long list. Okay, so the fact of the matter is these renters have a long list of rights based upon consumer laws in the state of California, and also their rental agreement that is approved by the state of California. Okay, so the fact of the matter is you have given up some rights. So yes, you do own the property in conjunction with a renter that also owns some rights in the property, and it will continue to be your investment property, and it will be their home. Okay, and so we just need to work that. We call that rent sense. Okay, rent has to make sense to the landlord and to the tenant, and it's best done if we start calling them something different: owner clients and resident customers. Okay, if we start changing the nomenclature, maybe we can start changing the attitudes. If we can start changing the attitudes, we can start changing the practices. And we really do need to change the practices, because housing is the #1 problem in this Golden State. It's not just in California, and it's interesting now throughout California, all of California, half the people rent, all through California, and that's the way it's going to stay for some time, because you know what? There's nothing that says that it's going to change it. So you know what? We have to create a marketplace that will be inviting to owners to be investors, but be responsible investors, good business owners. And then we also have to put out the red carpet to the best qualified renters so that they will want to live and stay in our properties.
Well said. Hey, I want to touch on one other thing before we start wrapping up. And I know this is starting to affect different parts of the country. It may not be affecting all our listeners' areas, but here in San Diego, we recently saw at least a temporary end to the Airbnb and vacation rental by owner property that's renting by the day or by the week. Has that affected your business at all? And can you comment on that decision San Diego made?
Well, it has not. I do not believe that it has, because there is such a demand for housing that for it to divide up into, you see, the fact of the matter is, when housing is as high cost as it is, people will come up with some very unique out of the box solutions to their housing, to their living, where they call home. So you have roommates. You're going to have, so Airbnb, that's just another derivative of roommates. Okay, so I understand how it gets started, and I'm not going to throw rocks at another competitor that is in that overall housing market. However, there have been problems that unless and until our government at the closest possible level deals and confronts those issues and make sure that they abide by the same rules that we do. And there has to be a decision. Okay, are these hotels, are they going to be judged by the hotel rules? Are they going to be judged by the rental housing rules? Or are we going to make up a set of rules all by themselves? I don't care. What I'm saying is, putting your head in the sand will not work. As a case in point, that's exactly what they did when we kept telling them, hey, you know what? Half the people rent. Half the housing permits that you give have to be for rental housing. They can be single family houses that are built for rental, but it doesn't matter. But you have to build at least half your, no, we don't have to do that. That's not what people want. No, that's just not what the people that came to the meeting wanted. Okay? And it said they were going to take your job from you. Wanted, but it is what the community wants and needs. And so now we completely had this skewed for so many years. Now we are just so upside down, because now we've gone through this recession, and a lot of people on the rental, on the housing side, on the for sale housing side, have lost their homes or have walked away from those homes, so that they are now on the rental side.
Yep, they're renting.
Well, if people think that that's going to snap right back, I got news. It's not. It's not happening anywhere in the country.
Oh yeah. Well, if they short sold, they're down for about 3 to 5 years, and if they foreclose, a minimum of 7 years.
That's right.
And most of the properties that I helped people market in my investor pool, that was who the applicant was people coming out of the decimation of our recession.
That's right. And the fact of the matter is, these were accumulated by large companies that were set up for the purpose of scooping up these houses. And they accounted for a lot, and just investors and all. But what I'm saying is that once a single house goes to the rental side, the fact is it probably won't come back. Because people are recognizing very quickly, hey, wait a minute, why should I sell this rental house when it's making money and it makes sense, and I'm paying down a mortgage and I'm gaining equity, and one day I'm going to own this house free and clear, and the rent is going to go to augment my retirement. Why would I leave that? And we're right there with them. We're saying, yeah, we have a program, Retire on Rent. Okay. And we will show them step by step exactly how they're going to do that. And so the fact of the matter is, it begins with education. And for some, the marketplace was sufficient education, to the extent that now 35% believe that real estate, 35% of all investors, it used to be, and in 5 years ago, it was 21% believe that real estate was a better investment than any of the stock market, any of the stocks. Now, 35% believe it is the best investment of all investment opportunities. Okay, well, you know what? I'll tell you, when we have more and more people that have investment dollars, and more people have to plan for retirement because they don't have it resolved totally, more of them are going to look towards becoming rental owners. And as long as they do that with professional management, they're going to win in the long term. And so those properties that were once for sale, once they are turned over to the hands of an investor, it's likely it won't return. And so the inventory of available housing for people to buy has gone down. Like you say, the qualifications for people has gone down. The new millennial group, they have their own debt. they have
the
other
student
debt, the
loans.
student loans, et cetera,
Yeah.
which is much as a crisis as the housing bubble. And
Well,
they got to
and
take care of that before they can do anything in the housing market.
yeah, and they're a more transient bunch too, because the job market's completely different for them. I know a lot in the millennials in the tech world that they work on 18-month contracts and then they go on to the next place, which could take them to a different part of California or out of state.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
they're not tending to buy. You know, people like to say, "Oh, well, the millennials have no money." I disagree.
No, they have money.
They have money, but
Yeah.
they don't have the desire to buy the way our generation did, because their job market is creating a more transient lifestyle for them.
And if you break it down to whether or not they ought to buy a home, or they ought to make additional contributions to their 401k, because most of them have them,
Right.
or they should make more contributions to the 401k, they're deciding to make bigger contributions to their 401k.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we're about to run out of time here, Neil. And before we do, I do want to give you one plug too that we haven't talked about, and that is your partnership. That is to say, FBS's partnership with the real estate community. One thing I will share with our listeners is a company like Neil's, when I send him referrals, and I do often, one of the benefits of doing that is not only knowing that my client's going to be taken well care of, and by putting my name to Neil's company, I'm looking good in the process. But when that client does make the decision to sell, he makes sure that that client comes back to me so that I get the listing. And that's one thing about our relationship that I've always appreciated, is I never have to worry about what that client is going to do when it comes time to sell. Should they? So I appreciate that. And
well, just like we appreciate we have a reality in terms of our abilities and our expertise in our part of the real estate marketplace. We bow to the reality that the changes have been such that we need to look for expertise on the other side. So, yes, we do have our owners that some of them say, "Hey, I need to sell this property," or what have you. Well, do you have a relationship with a realtor? We look at, did they come in through a Thomas or one of the others that we service that way?
Right.
Or if they're not, well, then we look at, okay, well, then what kind of realtor would you like? What kind of realtor will serve your needs? And we have now a stable of people that we can send them to, you being one of them. So
Yep.
we find it beneficial as well. We are working to the highest and best use of our time and our expertise. And for instance, my partner, Chris DeMarco, he has always practiced this way, and it comes naturally for him as a businessman. It comes a little less naturally for me as an old-time broker that did 4,000 escrows of their own.
Yeah.
So, but I've gotten used to it, and actually we've done that. We made that commitment back in the early '90s, and we've lived pretty true to that.
Well, Neil, I want to thank you once again for joining me today and helping me do my debut of a solo act here.
Absolutely, you did great. And they threw everything. Your partner left you high and dry. He left you with the technical problems. Oh my gosh!
Oh, that's Jonathan for you.
You persevered and you handle it, man. You are on top of it.
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, hey, that's the true mark of a professional. It's not when things are going well. It's when things are going haywire that you see the true value of that person.
Yeah, and actually, I think everybody can see that there's possibility. On your case, I don't know of a real estate escrow or a transaction that doesn't have a few wrinkles that have to be ironed out. Maybe on a daily basis, but
yeah. Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
You bet.
Well, Neil, please share with everyone how they can get in touch with you online and otherwise.
Okay. Please call us at our metro office is at 619-286-7600. That's 286-7600. In North County, properties that are north of 52, please call us at 858-487-4004. And then that is FBS-PM.com. So F like Frank, B like Baker, S like Sam, hyphen, that's a hyphen, Paul like Mary, Paul like Mary, Paul, P like Paul, and M like Mary.com.
You're hitting those screwdrivers early in the morning there.
There you go. Yeah.
And how about social media?
Social meeting, we're on Facebook as FBS Property Management, and you can reach us through the Apartment Association, you can reach us through the IRM, you can reach us through NARPM, you can reach us through the Chamber of Commerce, you can reach us through the Better Business Bureau. Okay?
You're out there, baby. All right. All right, Neil Fjellestad, I appreciate you being here, and I certainly appreciate FBS Property Management and all the information you shared with us today. And to our listeners, I'm Thomas J. Nelson. I'm a residential realtor here in beautiful San Diego, California, where I'm never too busy for your referrals. And you can count on this fact that if you have a client that is looking to invest, one of the things I'm going to do is connect them with this professional that we just spent the last hour with. Neil, thanks again. And to our listeners, we'll see you next week. And have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.